My name is Brendan Scott, and I'm the historian in residence for Cavan County Council. And as part of the Decade of Centenaries programme, I've been recording a number of these short webisodes in which I discuss the various events, people and themes which arise in Cavan during the early 1920s. And the subject of this webisode is the death of Brother Michael Morgan of Drumavady in the parish of Den of gunshot wounds which he received in Belfast on the 22nd of July 1920. All of the incidents that we've discussed in these webisodes so far, bar the last one about Glengevlin Gaeltacht, all of those took place in Cavan. All of those were a death of somebody in Cavan. And in fact, one of them at Lappenduff was Sean McCartney, a Belfast man who died in Cavan. And this time we have a Cavan man who died in Belfast. And I'm indebted to Monsignor Liam Kelly, who ploughed this particular furrow a few years ago and investigated Michael Morgan and his life and his death, and who published his findings in an excellent article in the Breffni Journal in 2014. And he has very graciously allowed me to use the material which he gathered at that point for this webisode. And I urge anyone who's interested in reading up more about this particular incident to check out that article by Monsignor Kelly, which, as I say, was published in the 2014 issue of the Breffni Journal. So if we have a look at Michael Morgan, there he is there. And Brother Michael Morgan is the name under which he left this life. But when he entered it, he was actually named Patrick Morgan. And as has been the case with a lot of these people that I've examined in these webisodes, there are discrepancies again about his date of birth. The date of birth recorded in the Redemptorist Provincial Archive in Dublin. He was a Redemptorist, and so they have his file. The date of birth recorded there is the 1st of March 1892, and that's also the date recorded on his gravestone in the crypt in Clonard Monastery in Belfast, where he's buried. But there's no record of his birth or his baptism in the church records for his native parish of Den in Cavan. But the date given on the civil registration of his birth is the 8th of March, not the 1st of March. But as we have seen before in some of these webisodes, it was not unusual for civil births to be recorded as being later than they actually were, because you could be fined for the late registration of a birth. So I would be inclined to think the 1st of March is probably the correct date. Patrick Morgan was the youngest son of 5 children born to James Morgan and Margaret McGoohan, who lived in the townland of Drumavady in the parish of Den in Cavan. Patrick was probably baptised in St. Matthew's Church in Drumavady and probably went to the National School, which is in Drumavady. Both the church and the school were situated in his own town land, less than half a mile from his home where he grew up. The 1901 census, which was taken on a Sunday night on the 31st of March 1901, listed Patrick there and said that he was 8 years old, which is slightly inaccurate. He had actually turned 9 at the beginning of the month. And it says that he was a scholar and that he could read and write. And it seems that it was expected in the family that he was going to take over the family farm, because there were 3 boys in the family, and the other 2, the 2 older boys, had emigrated to America. John, Joe, and Matthew were their names, so they were gone. So it was sort of expected, I suppose, in the family that Patrick, as he was known at that point, was going to be the man who would take over the farm. But Patrick seems to have upset the family's apple cart at this point, because he actually entered the Redemptorist Order in Dundalk on the 7th of July 1909 when he was 17, and he took the name there, Brother Michael. And when Patrick joined the Redemptorists, his father James wrote to one of his other sons, Matthew, out in America, asking him to come back and take over the farm, which Matthew did. We don't know how happy or unhappy he was about that, but nevertheless, that is what the other brother did. And the Redemptorists may have seemed to have been an unusual choice of order for Patrick to join, but they actually had a high profile in Cavan in the late 1800s and in the early 1900s. And Brother Michael, as we are now going to call Patrick from now on, later said that there was a parish mission run by the Redemptorists when he was young, and that was a deciding factor in his decision to later join that particular order. Brother Michael, as we now know him, was a postulant for just over 9 months. And then on the 17th of April 1910, he received the habit. And it appears that during his period as a novice, Brother Michael moved between the Redemptorist house in Dundalk and the monastery of St. Alphonsus in Limerick, perhaps also a Redemptorist house in Rathgar in Dublin. He may have been in Dublin for a while as well. And we know that he was a novice brother in Limerick at the end of 1913, and that he was there in late 1915 and in early 1916 as well. The records have him placed in Limerick at that time. On the 25th of December 1916, Christmas Day, he made his final profession in Dundalk, and sometime after that, possibly early 1917, he was transferred to Clonard Monastery in Belfast. We don't know much about what Brother Michael got up to when he first went to Clonard, but he wrote regularly to his family back home, and he seems to have kept up a very warm relationship with his family, and he was always asking after how everybody was, and asking how neighbours were, and asking how friends were. And it seems as well that people were writing to him asking him to include them in his prayers, and he would often write back and say, I have included you in my prayers, or that thing you've asked me to pray for, I have done so, and so on. So he seems to have kept up that relationship, that close relationship with his home place for the rest of his life. Sometime in early 1920, Brother Michael was appointed sacristan in the Church of the Most Holy Redeemer at Clonard in the monastery. And that was a very important and demanding role. There was constant activity in that church. And in 1920, Father John Kelly, who was the newly appointed rector of the monastery, stated in a letter after Brother Michael had died, Kelly wrote to his sister Katie. And he wrote of Brother Michael that for the past few months, he, Brother Michael, had been sacristan. And in a large church like Clonard, the office of sacristan always requires a capable, hard-working brother. He was energetic and courteous to all. On the occasion of big feasts which are celebrated here, he never spared himself to make those celebrations a success. And his skill in the arrangement and decorations of both the church and altars at such times has been frequently commented upon, both in and outside the congregation. So he seems to have done well in this particular post. But by the summer of 1920, sectarian tensions were rising in Belfast, and the War of Independence had seen 40 people die in Derry in May and June of that year, and people felt that violence was going to spread to Belfast soon, particularly with the 12th of July looming on the horizon. And there is an inflammatory speech given by Edward Carson on the 12th in 1920, but despite that, the day passed off generally peacefully. And in a note to his parents 4 days later on the 16th, Brother Michael wrote, "All calm and peaceful at the 12th." So it passed off peacefully enough, but that peace, tragically for Brother Michael, would be short-lived. On Wednesday, the 21st of July 1920, the first day back after the 12th holiday, about 5,000 Protestant and Unionist workers held a lunchtime meeting outside Workman Clark's yard. And following that, a large number of them gained entry into Harlan and Wolff, into the shipyards, and attacked Catholics or socialist workers that they found there and drove them from their place of work. And these attacks continued into the evening and spread to other workplaces and other parts of the city as well. And it became very hostile, and Belfast became a very, very dangerous place at this time. And approximately 10,000 Catholic and socialist workers were forcibly expelled from their workplaces and in and around Belfast over those following days and weeks. Now, Protestants were also attacked and driven from their homes in reprisal. So there's this cycle of violence that would ebb and sway over the next 18 months. But the best accounts, if you want to call them that, of Brother Michael's death in Clonard Monastery on Thursday, the 22nd of July, 1920, can be read in two contemporary letters written by Redemptorist priests, Father Cleary and Father John Kelly, who I mentioned a moment ago, who was the rector. They were both in Clonard at the time. And one of the letters is written by Father Cleary on the 26th of July, 1920, so 4 days after Michael died, and the other one was written by Father Kelly, which was sent to Michael's sister Katie, and that was written on the 30th of July. And in that letter, Father Kelly wrote, on the fatal day, he, Brother Michael, had been continually working in the church from early morning, and after he had rung the evening Angelus, he proceeded to his room upstairs. In passing along the corridor on which his room was situated, he stopped for an instant at the window where he was shocked to gaze at the crowd below. At that moment, the shots rang out and he was no more. So it doesn't give a huge amount of detail as to what happened there. But if we look at the next letter, which was written by Father Cleary, he writes an account of what happens, and he says, all Thursday on the 22nd of July, there was continual firing from the direction of Kashmir Road. And at 6:15 p.m., Brother Michael was taking his tea with some of the fathers and then went, followed by Brother Gerard, to the top corridor to tidy up some rooms after the clergy retreat. Brother Michael happened to look out at the window of the top corridor near the edge of the stairs, and he saw the soldiers deliberately aiming at him. "My God," he said, "they're going to fire." And scarcely were the words out when a bullet from a Lewis gun stretched him dead. Brother Gerard, who was on the step below Brother Michael, heard him utter these words. So there's a period of firing on the monastery for the next while, and the rest of the community in Clonard hid in the cellar for safety while this was happening. And realizing that Brother Michael was missing, it must have been quite chaotic in the monastery at that time, and no one knew what was going on, I suppose. Realizing that Michael was missing, Father Kelly climbed the stairs towards the top corridor, and he saw Brother Michael lying on the top corridor, and he attempted to reach him in order to administer the last rites to him, but he was driven back by another hail of bullets. That's the window there where Brother Michael was shot that he was looking out from. And eventually, Father Kelly managed to haul Brother Michael down the stairs, and he anointed him when he got him down safely away from the shots. Father Kelly phoned the police, and after some delay, 3 policemen came to the monastery. And he also phoned the commander of the military forces in Belfast to complain about the actions of the military. And the commander claimed that there had been sniping from the direction of the monastery, and that his soldiers had orders to fire in the direction from which the sniping came. And Father Kelly vehemently denied that there was any firing of any kind coming from the direction of the monastery. Now, the claim that there were snipers operating from Clonard was broadcast by the Associated Press and repeated in some of the Unionist newspapers over the next few days. But the nationalist newspaper, the Irish News, complained about these inaccuracies in other newspapers, and they provide quite a good account of what happened to Brother Michael. Now, Brother Michael had been hit by 3 bullets, one of which passed right through his body, I should say. 2 others were lodged in his lungs. And the civil registration of his death states that the death was due to shock and hemorrhage following gunshot wounds. Now, strangely enough, in that civil registration of his death, his age is noted as being 35 when he was only 28. Obviously, some kind of admin error with his age there. Now, Brother Michael's funeral took place in Clonard Church of the Holy Redeemer, where he had been the sacristan, on Saturday, the 23rd of July, 1920. Brother Michael's body was buried directly opposite the entry to the crypt, and the Latin inscription on his tomb reads as follows: Michael Morgan, born the 1st of March 1892, professed into the order on the 25th of December 1916, and died on the 22nd of July 1920. Because of that's also a photograph of Michael, which is hanging in Clonard, close to the spot where he was shot. That's a younger shot of him than in the other picture I showed you. He's slightly older in the other picture. Because of the disturbed state of the country at that time, and especially Belfast at that time, Brother Michael's family were unable to attend the funeral. The family had received the telegram informing them about his death. They were actually saving hay in the meadow when they found out the awful news that their son and brother had been killed. The inquest into his death was opened, and on Tuesday, the 10th of August 1920, it was opened on that date, and then it was adjourned until the following day. And the jury returned a verdict which stated that death was caused by bullets from machine gun or rifle discharged by the military in Cooper Street area, that the firing which resulted in Brother Morgan's death was entirely unnecessary for the purpose of suppressing the riot and was unprovoked by the action of any person in the monastery or grounds. They approved the opinion that the soldiers who actually discharged the shots at the monastery should be called to give evidence. So the inquest said, the jury at the inquest said, we need to call in the soldiers who shot to get their side of things. So the inquest had established that Brother Michael was an entirely innocent victim of this, and that the firing on the Redemptorist monastery in Clonard was entirely without justification. But no one was ever charged with Brother Michael's unlawful killing. Now, Father Kelly, as I said to you a minute ago, had written a letter to Brother Michael's sister Katie, and I just want to give you another little quote from that particular letter, where he sums up Brother Michael quite well here. He says, "It is hard to find words to do credit to him, but during his 11 years in the congregation, he was most zealous, kind, and charitable, devoted to his duties, faithful to his vocation. His superiors had the fullest confidence in him, and his brethren respected and revered him. Above all, he was a lover of prayer and always sought to imitate his divine model, our most holy Redeemer. In his but too brief career, he laboured much for God. He was a daily communicant. He never lost an opportunity of hearing Holy Mass, and the evening before his death, he had been to confession." So Father Kelly is saying that Brother Michael had died as good a death as you could have hoped for. And of course, he was 28 years old when he was shot dead on the 22nd of July, 1920, a Cavan man in Belfast at a very, very bad time to be in Belfast. Brother Michael was not the first, nor would he be the last person to die during this very, very turbulent time. So for anyone who's interested in looking into more detail on this particular incident, your first port of call should be the article written by Monsignor Liam Kelly, which was published in the Breffni Journal in 2014, which is about Michael Morgan and his life and his death. There's also some mention of Brother Michael in the book written by Ewan O'Halpin and Dahi O'Coran, The Dead of the Irish Revolution. You can find Brother Michael's entry on page 153. The Irish News Archive, the newspaper archive, is very, very useful as well. And the Irish News also has quite a full account of what goes on, and is quite critical of some of the papers that say that there were snipers firing from the direction of Clonard. There's also material in the Irish Independent about it. It made national news. There's also stuff in the Anglo-Celt about it as well. So just to sum up, I suppose, again, just my thanks as always to Cavan County Council, who've been very, very supportive of me and this project that we're running at the moment. But I especially want to thank the Library Service for all of their continual help and support and encouragement. They're a great group of people to work with. In particular, Emma Clancy, the County Librarian, Sinead McCardle, and Jonathan Smith. The wonderful people to work with, and I'm very, very lucky in that regard. And a particular word of thanks as well to Monsignor Liam Kelly for all of his help and support in putting together this short talk. And thank you as well to you all for tuning in, and hopefully I will see you all again very soon. Thank you very much.